Post-draft rookie rankings, top of the board shouldn't surprise you too much, but there will be some guys later that I have above consensus and will certainly help you out in your draft. First, though, in a tier by himself, Caleb Williams. We've known he's been pick 1 since 2 years ago. He's got an amazing supporting cast, went pick 1. Don't overthink it. He's the first overall pick. At 2, though, consensus right now seems to be Marvin Harrison. I think in a 12-man, I slightly lean Daniels. Obviously, depends on your team, setup. I think in 12-man, I'm going to take the quarterback with the rushing potential over the receiver most of the time. But in 10-man, I'd certainly lean Marv. That said, I do have Daniels, Harrison, and Nabers all in that second tier. I do think Nabers is a lot closer to Marv than a lot of people want to admit. So if you are, considering Daniels, you might want to just move down to 3, let someone take Marv at 2. I think Daniels at 3 is a great pick. And if you love, Nabers, you're getting him at 4. That's amazing value. I think it's so good. If you get Nabers at 5, throw a party. That said, at 5, and another tier by himself, third tier all by himself, I'm putting Drake Maye. I have been seeing some people go McCarthy before Maye. I understand the reasons why. I mean, McCarthy has an amazing supporting cast set up with Hawkinson, Addison, and Jettas. I don't know. I get it. I'm not a quarterback scout. Certainly am not. I just think Drake Maye has shown a lot more production in his collegiate career, went higher, has better rushing potential. JJ can scoot, but I think Maye actually has, he edges him out a little bit in the rushing department. And I just think he's the better player. That's why I'm in the tier by himself. If you fully believe in JJ, don't be afraid to go and get your guy. That said, JJ in a tier with Rome and Xavier worthy. My ultimate kind of deciding factor with this tier is if someone told me, hey, I took Xavier Worthy over Rome, fine. If I took Xavier Worthy over JJ McCarthy, still kind of can see it. Worthy had great production in an amazing spot. If you take Worthy over Maye, I'd be a little hesitant there. Take the guys you believe in so that you don't, live with any regrets in Dynasty. But that's kind of the ultimate deciding factor. I was like, I think Maye's in his tier by himself because I could justify taking Worthy over McCarthy. I don't think I could do it for Maye. Just to fill this out, Rome, another great player. In most classes, he's the wide receiver 1. The top end of this wide receiver group in this draft is just so good. I think Rome at 7 and Worthy also at 8. Either one of them at 7, 8. I think it's just a steal. I think Worthy, I'm kind of surprised he's not as high. I was expecting him to shoot up a little bit more on boards. I think that it'll kind of even out more as we get more and more drafts, but I'm perfectly happy taking Worthy at 8. Could even convince me to do it at 7 before Rome, but I'd certainly lean Rome. Next tier, we have Bo Nix, Brian Thomas, Brock Bowers, and Jonathan Brooks. Only real surprise here would be maybe Brooks at 12, but ADP seems to kind of adjusted for it. For Bo Nix, I also have him at the top of this tier. Most people maybe don't. Pretty simple. A quarterback at pick 12 with the, Sean Payton, I don't see Denver really. He has no competition. What, is Zach Wilson going to take his job? I get situation changes a lot before talent, and you may not really believe in Bo Nix's talent. But again, I'm not a quarterback scout. If an NFL team wants to take Bo Nix at 12, I mean, shit, I'll have to trust them. And I think, long-term Sean Payton with Bo Nix is a pretty positive outcome. So I'm going to put him at 9, especially in a 12-man. That quarterback scarcity really pushes Bo Nix to 9 for me. Brian Thomas is really intriguing after Zay Jones has left. I mean, in this kind of group, he maybe not the best production, but I think he's still very young. I think he's kind of like a better version of QJ. I said that in a previous video. So I'm happy with him at 10. Brock Bowers, production-wise, should be above Thomas. I'm just not a fan of taking tight ends in rookie drafts. Bowers is kind of an exception, so I wouldn't, this tier is very malleable. If you believe in Bowers, go ahead, but it's just, with Mayer, it's kind of confusing. Doesn't have a quarterback long-term. Maybe they get one next year, though. Again, situation changes before talent, and Bowers is certainly talented. Jonathan Brooks doesn't really scratch, the previous RB1s we've seen. This RB class is certainly weaker, and I do demonstrate that later on in this rankings. But I think Brooks is solid. He was behind one of the best running back prospects we've ever seen in Bijan and Roschon Johnson. So you can't really blame his production. I think he's going to be pretty talented. Carolina's a solid spot. Miles Sanders is probably done. Hubbard's probably just a change of pace back for him until like Brooks gets really healthy. And I kind of think, Young has a chance to turn around. They really did beef up their O-line, so pretty great landing spot. I think in most drafts you won't have to take Brooks at 12, but that's kind of, landing spot wise, that's where I'd put him. Another one, I don't think you'd have to take him at the 201, but that's where I'd put him. It's where I'd start to be happy taking him is Michael Penix. Very strange. We all know how strange it is, but because of how strange it is, his value shouldn't decrease the 2 years while he's sitting. If you think about the Jordan Love thing, nobody should have sold Jordan Love at a loss from wherever they took him. Penix should be a pretty insulated asset, especially if you're in a deep rebuild. He's a great pick because you can delay that production, kind of defer it, stay at the top of the draft. If you're a contender, you're obviously not going to be looking to take him. So for those contenders, I do have 3 wide receivers in this tier, those being Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, and Ricky Pearsall. Coleman and McConkey are very, very close for me. Pearsall is one I don't trust as much, but I do trust Shanahan. All these fifth-year wideouts that, get production in their 5th year, it's just, I'm going to be hard-pressed to really believe in you. But nonetheless, I do trust Shanahan to, work Pearsall in. That's the main reason I kept him in this tier. As for the other two, Keon Coleman, production could have been better, but he got the best landing spot for a wide receiver in this draft, especially getting picked at 33. Pretty solid. And then Ladd McConkey might be a little capped by the Chargers, run first focus. I don't think it'll be as harsh as people are expecting. You have Justin Herbert, you're still going to throw the ball at a decent clip. And McConkey should be a high priority target, kind of filling in like a Keenan Allen role in this new offense. But those 3, all great. Take them any way you want. I certainly think that Pearsall is the bottom of those 3. After him, I would have Jaylen, Polk, Xavier, Legette, and Trey Benson. Polk is kind of just, good, not great. I don't really have much to say on him. He built his production up each year, capping out. Early declare as a junior, had his best season because McMillan got hurt. Patriots, open depth chart, kind of all a good situation. Why not roll the dice on him? I prefer that dice roll to Legette, who again is a 5th year, who only did anything in his 5th year. And, while I was talking up Carolina for, Jonathan Brooks' sake, I don't know. I just don't really trust Xavier Legette, but his accent is spot on, prime, amazing. Next one, Trey Benson, another person I just don't super trust. He doesn't catch passes at a great clip. Definitely a good situation after this year when James Conner is likely gone. He should be a pretty decent volume back for the Cardinals. Big body, too. He won't come out in goal line situations. He's just not going to get a ton of pass-catching chops, I don't think. But then again, you wouldn't have thought that James Conner would be doing much of anything in the pass-catcher department. And with the Cardinals, he did a decent bit. And then again, in a White Wolf Sports patented tier by himself, I do have Adonai Mitchell. High likelihood that a Mitchell is a better NFL player than he is fantasy prospect. He's going to be a great deep threat in this Colts offense, especially with how, the arm power that Anthony Richardson has. It's just, how consistent is that target share going to be in this offense as a deep threat? How will he be used? Is it more of a field stretching than, real, those are the concerns. But I certainly think he has the big time upside to be a surprise pick. Obviously, Pittman is there. Josh Downs is there. So there is some target competition, which is why you see him this low despite being picked at pick 52. Then in the next tier, at the top of it, I have Jermaine Burton. I think Burton is one of the great, late second picks. I think his production profile is better than people realize considering where he was and what he did. Certainly some character concerns. That's why he fell to pick 80. But this is fantasy football. I don't really care if you have fantasy concerns. I don't have to deal with you on the team. As long as those fantasy concerns don't actually keep you off of a team, I'm going to roll the dice, especially getting later into the second round with this. I love Burton at the top of this tier. After him, I have Troy Franklin. Went to Denver at pick 102, paired up with Bo Nix, which is great. They just keep building that chemistry, so that's kind of just the narrative that's really appealing. Otherwise, I think Franklin's, production didn't do anything special as a freshman. He was kind of similar to Burton, just at, less competitive school. No offense to Oregon. but he built it up year over year, had a great junior season, and is an early declare. The pre-draft process had him, supposedly be second-round pick. So very surprising that he fell to 102. That's probably indicative of those size concerns for him, especially as like a more, deep threat option. But again, late second, love the dice roll. I think I'm going to buy into production more than, where he was picked necessarily, which is why I have him above someone like Malachi Corley, who did go to the Jets at pick 65, but long-term for me, I don't see the massive appeal of Corley in the Jets offense. I'm still very concerned about how much longer Rodgers is going to play. And, Rodgers also doesn't trust rookies immediately. You have to earn that respect. And the slot role, there's just a lot of mouths starting to build up in this Jets offense, which is why I have him lower despite being at pick 65. And I also don't know that I trust the Jets to fully utilize him. Next one, McMillan went to the Bucs at pick 92. Got hurt this past year, but he did have some solid production the year prior with Penix. To put it bluntly, who knows? It's another dice roll, try to hit a home run. I don't really think that Trey Palmer, or I'm blanking on the other Bucs wide receiver who was drafted last year, I don't think they're major threats. McMillan should be competing for the other outside, role in this Bucs offense. They supposedly want to put Godwin back in at slot, which I think will be very good for Godwin. For McMillan, similar thing to, what we talked about with Franklin and Mitchell. That outside role isn't, super enticing if he's going to be used purely as that deep field stretcher. Kind of like a similar issue I had with Jalen Hyatt last year. That's kind of where I'd put McMillan. If he can break out and get consistent target share despite being a field stretcher, obviously that's massive, but it's hard to get me to trust these people, which is why I have them later, but I do trust them more than most of the running backs. So the next one we'll talk about would be Blake Corum. It's just a really tough landing spot. With the Rams, you have to assume they're giving Kyron the load. I think Corum only comes in goal line situations. He'd just be like a modern-day Jonathon Stewart, which could have some fantasy value, especially in non-PPR leagues, but for most people, I don't really think it's a super enticing pick, but he is a very solid handcuff if Kyron were to ever get hurt. Next tier, Ben Sinnott and Roman Wilson. Sinnott, decent enough tight end prospect, and going to Washington, paired up with Jayden Daniels, could see some positive things. Roman Wilson, another one, I really think he's going to be better in the NFL than in fantasy, especially being capped in this Steelers offense, which I don't think will be throwing the ball at a very high clip. To put it bluntly, I really don't think there's much room to support a fantasy cast outside of George Pickens and maybe Pat Freiermuth. This Pittsburgh Steelers team is going to run the ball, and they're going to run the ball a lot. They got all beefcakes in this draft. They're going to run the ball, and when they need to, Russell Wilson will dump it right over your head. But it's going to be inconsistent for Roman Wilson, especially as a rookie. The other kind of reason he got picked at 84 but isn't great for fantasy purposes, I think the Steelers fell in love with his run blocking. Like, again, better as an NFL prospect than fantasy player, but still a chance. Next one, Luke McCaffrey. Great production at Rice. Got picked at pick 100. 100 is kind of the borderline, threshold. It's not super harsh, but that is kind of the point where we see significantly less fantasy relevant players after pick 100 or in that kind of range. So good that he got picked before or at pick 100. And at Washington, if McLaurin is going to be moved on from, who knows? Dotson had a solid rookie season. Who knows where he's going from there? McCaffrey should take a slot role. With a rookie quarterback, I still like, slot production. We saw it kind of last year with Josh Downs where people were really worried about AR's accuracy concerns. When you're thrown to the slot, those are kind of the easy throws most of the time. So I think from a production standpoint, it's really positive for McCaffrey that he ended up in Washington. But, he still does have to prove it. At a very small school was where he did all that production, so we shall see. But I definitely put him at the top of this tier. Then we have Javon Baker, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, Will Shipley, and Ray Davis. Javon Baker, open competition in New England. Okay production at UCF. Take it or leave it. And then all four of these running backs, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, Will Shipley, and Ray Davis, they're just premium handcuffs to me. I think Jalen Wright is the one most likely to actually, deliver maybe RB2 value. I think it's more likely that he, busts off a long run, but it's going to be inconsistent. Jalen Wright has great home run hitting ability, which is why you should be targeting him in, best ball. But for like a dynasty owner, it's going to be hard to know when you can start Jalen Wright unless a chain gets hurt. And if a chain gets hurt, then Wright is going to be a part of a committee. He's not going to be the lead one. So that is kind of the upside and downside. I think he's more likely to give you value without an injury, but if there is an injury, he's not going to have the upside that the rest of these backs do. Like, I think Marshawn Lloyd takes over most of the backfield if Josh Jacobs get hurt. Will Shipley was going to take over most of the backfield if Saquon gets hurt. Ray Davis, similar to Jalen Wright, should be kind of like that Blake Corum, Jonathan Stewart role. Like, he's going to be taking goal line work, short down work from James Cook, but he's never going to touch like the early rushing downs or, receiving work from James Cook, which again kind of very much so limits him. I'll round out this third round with the three tight ends, Ja'Tavion Sanders, Theo Johnson, and Tip Ryman. Tip is the biggest kind of sleeper in here. You will certainly not have to take him in the third round. You might be able to take him in the fifth. But, for his athleticism and all that, I think he's an amazing tight end prospect that isn't getting much looks just because, there is an incumbent great young tight end. But that isn't, super concerning for me. Two tight ends can perform in an NFL offense. Apart from Marvin Harrison, there is not much, there's not a lot of pass catching prominence in this Arizona Cardinals team. And I think Tip can, deliver solid value, and you can get him at a very decent price. I have him at 36. You can get him much later. As for the other two, Ja'Tavion Sanders did decent stuff at Texas, surrounded by a lot of talent in A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. Going to Carolina, pretty open, great stuff. Theo Johnson, I think more athletic than Ja'Tavion Sanders, less production, a little more questionable. The Giants, who knows what's going to happen. But Daniel Jones has, he delivered Bellinger a little bit of fantasy value. So maybe that's it for Theon Johnson. Maybe he can do a little bit, but I don't think he has like any top end stuff out of him. You can check out the rest of these rankings. I do go pretty deep. I'll keep them down in the description below. But please let me know if you have any questions, any concerns in the comments. Let me know who I have overvalued, undervalued, all that great stuff. And have a good one.